For decades, NATO's military machine revolved around American power. U.S. fighter jets, surveillance aircraft, missile systems, and defense software dominated the alliance almost without challenge. But now, cracks are beginning to form. Europe is quietly redirecting billions away from America's biggest defense giants. Canada is reconsidering its massive F-35 commitment, and countries like South Korea and Sweden are suddenly gaining ground inside NATO itself. What started as pressure from Washington may now be accelerating the exact opposite outcome: allies preparing for a future less dependent on the United States. Your roadmap to the latest in auto, welcome to Highway Herald, and here are the developments quietly reshaping NATO's defense future. NATO's growing drive toward defense self-reliance. One of the biggest transformations happening inside NATO right now is not simply about increasing military budgets. It is about reducing dependence on the United States itself. For decades, American defense contractors like Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Raytheon, and Northrop Grumman dominated NATO procurement, supplying fighter jets, missile systems, radar platforms, surveillance networks, and advanced combat software across Europe and Canada. But Trump's renewed pressure on NATO allies during his second term appears to have accelerated fears that relying too heavily on Washington could eventually create political or strategic vulnerabilities. European governments increasingly want greater control over logistics, software access, supply chains, production lines, and long-term defense planning. That shift is now fueling Europe's enormous €150 billion SAFE initiative and the broader Rearm Europe strategy focused heavily on sovereign capability and domestic manufacturing resilience. But Europe's push for strategic independence is not only benefiting domestic defense firms. Another unexpected country is rapidly emerging as one of NATO's biggest new suppliers: South Korea's explosive rise inside Europe's defense market. While Washington remains a dominant military supplier, South Korea has rapidly become one of the biggest beneficiaries of NATO's shifting priorities. European governments urgently needed faster weapons deliveries after Russia's invasion of Ukraine exposed severe supply shortages throughout the alliance. Korean defense manufacturers stepped directly into that gap with lower costs, faster production timelines, and NATO-compatible systems. Poland became one of the clearest examples after signing massive deals involving K-2 Black Panther tanks, K-9 self-propelled artillery systems, and F-50 fighter jets. Romania, Estonia, Finland, Norway, and Spain also expanded cooperation tied to Korean weapons systems and industrial partnerships. For many European governments, the appeal comes down to speed and practicality. Some Western-built systems reportedly required waits of 3 to 5 years, while Korean manufacturers could sometimes deliver within months, an enormous advantage in today's rapidly changing security environment. Before we delve deeper, if you're enjoying this deep dive, take a quick moment to subscribe to Highway Herald and turn on notifications. It really helps support the channel and keeps you connected to future automotive, defense industry, and geopolitical stories shaping the world around us. And as NATO members search for faster and more politically independent defense solutions, attention is now shifting toward one of the alliance's most symbolic military aviation programs. Boeing's NATO surveillance dominance faces a serious challenge. One of the most symbolic shifts inside NATO now centers around airborne surveillance aircraft. For decades, Boeing's E-3 Sentry AWACS represented the backbone of NATO battlefield coordination, with its massive radar dome becoming one of the most recognizable symbols of Western military aviation itself. Most analysts long expected Boeing's newer E-7 Wedgetail to naturally replace the aging fleet. But now, Sweden's Saab GlobalEye is emerging as a serious alternative, and that alone signals how dramatically priorities are changing across Europe. GlobalEye offers advanced, electronically scanned radar capable of simultaneously tracking air, sea, and ground targets while also delivering lower operating costs and greater operational flexibility. More importantly, European governments increasingly want sovereign control over software systems, logistics networks, upgrades, and maintenance operations after disputes involving Turkey and the F-35 program exposed the risks tied to overdependence on Washington. But perhaps nowhere is this growing debate over sovereignty and strategic leverage becoming more politically sensitive than in Canada's ongoing fighter jet review. Canada's F-35 review is becoming a major NATO pressure point. Canada may now be sitting at the center of one of NATO's most politically sensitive defense procurement battles. Ottawa originally committed to purchasing 88 Lockheed Martin F-35A fighter jets to replace the aging CF-18 fleet, with total long-term costs potentially exceeding 30 billion Canadian dollars. But after Trump returned to office and trade tensions escalated again, Prime Minister Mark Carney's government launched a review of the remaining aircraft purchases. While the first batch remained secured, the unresolved portion suddenly became strategic leverage during broader economic negotiations with Washington. Saab quickly stepped into the conversation by aggressively promoting the Gripen E with promises of Canadian assembly, sovereign-controlled software systems, domestic maintenance facilities, and thousands of local industrial jobs. Across NATO, governments are increasingly evaluating defense systems not only on combat performance, but also on political independence, industrial resilience, technological sovereignty, and long-term supply chain security. And once you connect all of these developments together, a much larger transformation inside NATO suddenly becomes impossible to ignore. Verdict: NATO's defense landscape is quietly transforming. The biggest story here is not simply that Europe or Canada may buy fewer American weapons. The real transformation is that NATO allies are increasingly prioritizing strategic independence over automatic dependence on Washington. South Korea's defense industry is rapidly expanding throughout Europe. Saab's global eye is suddenly challenging one of America's most symbolic surveillance platforms. Canada is using its F-35 review as geopolitical leverage. Meanwhile, Europe's massive defense spending initiatives are increasingly designed to strengthen European-linked manufacturing and sovereign industrial control first. Just a few years ago, this would have sounded almost unimaginable. NATO itself is not collapsing, but the alliance is clearly evolving into a more decentralized and strategically cautious structure. And if this trajectory continues, the global defense industry could look dramatically different by the end of this decade. Do you think NATO allies are making the right move by reducing dependence on American defense systems? Would Canada be smarter sticking with the F-35 or shifting toward alternatives like Saab's Gripen E? And could South Korea eventually become one of the world's dominant defense exporters alongside America and Europe? Share your thoughts and experiences down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive here on Highway Herald, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next vehicle updates, defense industry developments, and global automotive stories shaping the future. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. You can now check out any of the videos on your screen right now. The next story might surprise you even more.